I'm Nick Gregorio. Welcome to the Bar and the Stars. This week we're doing things a little differently. We're talking pro wrestling, so we brought in a bunch of pro wrestlers, and we might have started drinking a little earlier than usual. But first, joining me, it's the ballerina El Pollo Loco, Ray Carcillo, who's not a wrestler, Eli Everfly, Tyler Bateman, Terex, and our resident barfly, Phil Larigo. So guys, I want to know, are we excited about the current state of pro wrestling? Let's go down the horn. Ballerina, start with you.
I'm really excited, not just for female wrestling, but just in the direction that wrestling is going generally. I think it's great for me to be part of Southern California female wrestlers. There's a women's only wrestling school, so it's not only for the WWE, but also in the indie circuit. There's a lot happening. So to be one of the first.
Okay, we had a lot of people here. Next, El Pollo Loco. All right, Ray. I tried to follow that one up.
Yeah. No, I'm not excited about the state of pro wrestling right now. I mean, yes, the indie scene is thriving, but I think that you look at everything, everybody's trying to get to the WWE, and now that product has become so bloated because everybody's trying to get to that top aspect that now everything's
Like your answer, Ray.
down.
Eli, next. Come on.
The current state of pro wrestling is great right now because the indie circuit is really at a boom right now, and the WWE is getting a lot better just because of it.
There you go. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, man. I think pro wrestling in general is great right now. The Indies, Europe, Japan, like there are a lot of other places to have a job other than.
And Japan was never dead, dog. Japan's always been hot. Terex?
I agree completely with Tyler here. It's booming everywhere. And as far as WWE goes, they're actually picking up a lot of regular guys now and a lot of really good indie wrestlers. So it's changing for the better.
What about you, Phil Larigo?
I think WWE is like the SNL of wrestling, that like everyone strives to get there, and then when they get there, they're just miserable, and they stay or their career ends.
Okay, I think wrestling is in an interesting place right now. I think we're seeing a lot of kind of hipsters and people liking wrestling ironically. The old school like marks, they still go nuts for the same shit. But then you have like this weird smart fan somewhere in between that likes to feel like they're a part of the storylines. What do you think about that, Ray?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people have obviously have gotten wise to the storylines and kind of it's all about how much more can I get behind the scenes, how much more can I learn about these people, and I think that those fans have kind of really taken away something from wrestling because there used to be a bit of magic, I think, when you used to watch wrestling, and now it's just kind of like, all right, it's just another soap opera.
I want to open it up to you guys. You guys are the wrestlers. What do you think about that, kind of how that fourth wall has been demolished by like a CM Punk, and now it's like, where do you, because you guys do wrestling, pro wrestling, which is a little bit avant-garde. We'll call it avant-garde wrestling. So Tyler, what are your feelings on that?
If everyone's talking on the fourth wall, if everyone's Deadpool, then no one's Deadpool. Like if everyone's has the same.
That's a good point.
You know, if everyone's doing the same thing, then no one's doing anything different. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the fourth wall breaking in that sense that I remember when like the 1, 2, 3 kid beat Razor Ramon. That was the first time it blew my fucking mind. I was like, oh my God, there's these jobbers, they can actually win a match. And that was fucking insane to me. And I was like, this is crazy. And then it didn't happen for a long time. You know, and they let one out and I was like, oh, that's it. And then that's when I tapered off a little bit by being like a super fervent wrestling fan, but I kind of agree in the sense now that it's the opposite. Before it was like you had your matches, they were your jobbers, and now it's like there really aren't jobbers like there used to be, and it's just everybody can.
I think they're slowly starting to try to bring that back, though, right? Like you see some more enhancement matches, or you see a lot of guys who are that you'll see like 1 week and then you'll never see again, like you did when you were growing up, and then you won't see them again until they're in that part of the country again, maybe.
Okay, so it's being like territorial again, because I know I grew up with ECW, Philadelphia, born and raised, so I loved pro wrestling and indie wrestling. Shut up, Cooper, I hate you. But I know that though, out here the West Coast scene is popping. It's getting kind of hot right now. Like Eli, what, you want to speak on that a little bit? Kind of West Coast
Yeah, the
pro
Western
wrestling.
Coast scene of pro wrestling is popping right now. We got a lot of great networks like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla,
Yeah,
Lucha
Pro Wrestling's
Underground,
big, yeah.
Hood Slam in Northern California.
Great place. I love that fucking place.
Yeah, Future Stars of Wrestling. There's a lot of places where you could expand and grow as a professional wrestler.
Awesome. Ballerina, you're talking about the women's scene in pro wrestling. WWE is always just getting a ton of shit because they're like hot girls that they don't want them to do too much crazy stuff. Are you thinking that there's a change, like the tide is starting to change?
Definitely, I think there's a lot more agency for females. I mean, not to dog on bras and panties match if that's what you wanted to do and that's what opened the door for you and how you navigated your opportunities. But you should never feel with natural talent and discipline that that's the only option you have as a female.
That's awesome. Right. How about you, Pollo Loco? Maybe want to take the mask off and uncluck yourself?
Give me that glass.
Oh,
Where's that glass?
It took that to get me to my normal state. I'm sorry, you guys. Woo.
He's got a lot of catching up to do. Current state of pro wrestling.
Current state of pro wrestling. You know what? I'm actually happy with the way indie scene's starting to like rise up and starting to get better. Like WWE's starting to acknowledge it more. Because before I started wrestling, I was just a WWE mark. That's all I would watch. That's all I knew about. I didn't know about indies. And then I started watching the indies, and now I can see, like now that I see it, it was crazy that like WWE didn't even acknowledge it beforehand. It was just
WWE takes a very firm stance with that. I mean, they bought out their competition. They kind of homogenized everything. Will we ever see another ECW, an indie that kind of transcends its territory and becomes something much bigger than that? What do you think, Ray?
No, I don't think we will, because I think the problem is that WWE at this point is when an indie gets too popular or too big, when it starts to become possibly competitive, WWE will come in, swoop in, and snatch up all the best talent. And that's what you're seeing right now at WWE. They're having actually so much talent there right now that their product is getting watered down because they can't put all these great guys on a 3-hour show or a 2-hour show or a 1-hour show with NXT. So you're really starting to see that problem, but they're not going to stop doing that because they want to be the top dog in the yard. They don't want competition. They just want to use the indies as they are now to find the best possible wrestlers and then snatch them up later.
I want to switch gears right now to Hell in a Cell. Big pay-per-view coming up for WWE. It's like the eve of Halloween. It could be huge, but it feels, I don't know, it feels a little rote. It feels like they're just going back to the well where once the Hell in a Cell was a kind of a final match. Like this is where we have the final showdown. We had Taker, Shawn Michaels, Mankind, Undertaker, and these were big matches that sort of ended a feud, and now it's a yearly pay-per-view. Tyler, what do you think?
I mean, well, it's October, so of course it's Hell in the Cell. I think it's broken, though. I mean, if you have 3 of any, like one particular type of stipulation match on one card, on one show, it automatically, to me, devalues that because, like, okay, well, you've already seen it. By the time the last one goes on,
what are you going to do differently in 3 different matches? Like, what spots are you going to do?
And on one hand, that will make the people in the matches have to work harder. But on the other hand,
they're not going to.
Well,
maybe,
real
maybe
possibility.
Not, yeah.
But you've already seen so many of these things, so it's going to, in one way, increase the risk to the people in the match as well, because they're going to have to. Logical thing is, I'm going to have to go bigger, crazier. I have to stand out.
Tarek's really got something to say on it.
Oh, I was just thinking, I remember when it came from the King of the Ring. It was just a specialty match for the King of the Ring, and it was The Undertaker and Mankind. That match was the most amazing thing I ever seen at the time. Like, Mankind.
Dude, First Blood, Shawn Michaels versus
the way that
Undertaker.
Mankind put his body out, and the shit that he went through, it blew my fucking mind. Like, I couldn't believe it. Now we're going from that to a complete pay-per-view called Hell in a Cell. 3 matches of Hell in a Cell on that pay-per-view. I think it's just completely taken away from the whole aspect of it.
Yeah,
completely.
That's where a blood feud culminates in a gimmick match that is that over the top. And I think when you water it down, it's just another one of those. You can't play your best card straight away. And I think going back to the idea that the work is now a shoot. The shoot is work. Everyone's kind of winking at the camera and being like, I'm mad at this guy, but I'm really actually mad at this guy. And that takes us to Bill Goldberg, Brock Lesnar.
I think they blew it. Like Hell in a Cell's coming up, and they're like, "Oh, here's your Survivor Series," and it's like they're talking about the next one, and it's like, how am I supposed to get so stoked about this coming one when you've already announced the fucking steak dinner is coming up down the line?
Like I'm not gonna get full on this baked potato.
I say, like they opened their next candy bar before they finished their first candy bar.
Yeah, they're like,
And
cool.
do you think there's actual heat between Bill Goldberg and Brock Lesnar?
No, not at all.
Like
It
so
doesn't matter because if it is, it's making for great TV. If it not it's making for great TV.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna watch it. I'm excited for that.
I mean, the first one's a classic, so I mean,
But Goldberg's
gonna be a-
50 now, though. I mean,
it's
and I'm
gonna be
not
a
saying
high
that these
bar,
guys can't be. Obviously, they still wrestle well. Obviously, and it's a credit to their training. But like Goldberg hasn't been in a ring in years.
But
Like
it's
I mean,
Goldberg though.
See,
like-
I'm not really,
you guys are in
I'm not
love
really
with
pumped up
Goldberg
on
from
that. I'm not really.
1997.
I
You're
can
not
care
in
less
love
about
with. You're not in love with Goldberg
You
in
didn't mark out a
2016.
little bit at what WrestleMania when Hogan squared up with The Rock. You didn't mark out a little bit.
That's completely
different.
different. Now
That's
we're
different.
comparing now we're comparing apples and oranges. Like if you want to talk about Brock Lesnar and Bill Goldberg, that is nothing on my
I
to me.
agree. Do you
To
like,
me, there's
do you
no.
like what like Brock Lesnar is doing? His kind of like, I'm the toughest guy, so I should always win kind of gimmick. And I'm like, dog, it's pro wrestling. You shouldn't always win.
He
Like,
always kind of had that persona back when he first started. I mean, shit, you remember when he superplexed Big Show off and the ring fell apart? Like,
Yeah.
he's always had that kind of persona of I'm the biggest, baddest dude. Like, it doesn't matter how big.
Yeah.
But
as
he's-
a wrestling fan, I can't get behind that gimmick because I'm like, that's not what it's about.
I mean, after watching him lose his ass in UFC, like,
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
like,
it's
come
kind of
on,
hard
you're
to
not the
come
toughest
back
dude.
and say you're the biggest, baddest
Yeah.
dude anywhere. Like, everybody can be beat by someone.
So all you guys are part of WPW, Wrestling Pro Wrestling, which is pretty funny title in itself. It's kind of that left of center pro wrestling, almost the antithesis of what WWE is doing. I don't know, you guys want to talk about that a little bit? Or like, what's the difference between WPW and the current mainstream product?
We are okay with being weird. Like whatever outlandish gimmick you're down for, they're doing it.
That's,
Like, it
that's the
doesn't-
catchphrase. Let's make it weird.
Let's make it weird.
That's exactly what we embody is the weirdness of wrestling. You know.
What about you, Ballerina? How do you feel about wrestling in WPW versus other organizations, or like how it compares to WWE?
I like it. Like you said, it's a great avenue to be yourself, but not just an excuse to be weird, but to really make that an art form and engage the audience in a different way.
How about you, Eli? You got that great Muda vibe going on, that kind of...
Yeah, pro wrestling allows you to think outside of the box and allows the fans to think outside of the box too, and really focus on what makes pro wrestling theatrical, what makes it
The brutal ballet, if
yes,
you will, and
yes.
emphasis on ballet. kind
all
of
the
story
colorful
behind it.
characters.
All right, Phil's over here playing bartender.
suplex a fucking.
What are you doing? What are you fuck? We're supposed to keep it cool. You ruined it. You ruined it.
Where are the bouncers?
You ruined it.
Fuck.
Ruined it.
Look at the bouncers here. Why aren't there any
You
bouncers in
ruined
this bar?
everything.
That's what happens
Look
with
at him.
wrestler's beer.
Look at his face.
Is he all right? Guys, let's stop down.
I'm out. I'm fucking out.
That out of hand really quick.
We stop down. Sorry, is everyone all right? All right, guys, we had a little bit of altercation here on the set. Phil is okay, had to get some stitches. This week's episode's cut a little bit short. It's our apologies, but please leave some comments. I'm sure Phil will be happy about that. All right, guys, thanks.